I hope you can all hear me, and hello and welcome to the panel. It'll be a nice break, I think, from having a lot of information given to you, and now we can have a conversation about it. So for those of you who don't know, Moving Minds Alliance is a multi-stakeholder global advocacy alliance that focuses on early childhood development in crisis settings, and our advocacy aims are to strengthen financing, policy, and leadership for early childhood development in crisis, so that communities, caregivers, and most importantly children have the ability to thrive in their lives and not just survive. So joining me today on this very exciting panel, I don't know if many of you need introductions, but we have Dr. Hiam Lotfi, we have Dr. Bushra Kaddoura, we have Liana Ghent of, I'm sorry, I should have said where you're from. Sorry, I apologize. Hiam Lotfi is the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at the Modern University of Business and Science in Lebanon. Bushra Kaddoura is an ECE strategist and SGG specialist and advisor. Liana Ghent is the Executive Director at the International Step-by-Step Association, and Safayat is a Senior Research Fellow at the BRAC Institute of Education Development. So we're going to open up the discussion with just a very brief introduction from each of you about your work that you've done in ECD research, particularly in poly-crisis settings. So each of you can take just a couple of minutes to go through, and you can just pass the mic on.
I haven't done anything.
Is that right?
No, I did so many things. As related to polycrisis, I did a study about the effect of war on children that showed up to what extent during the war and polycrisis, to what extent these children are affected as related to cognitive abilities and behavioral abilities.
Amazing.
So another thing that we did is related to environment and the weather, and to what extent weather changes affect the child throughout the development. And moreover, we have done something related to crisis, COVID-19. I did a study about the COVID-19, to what extent COVID-19 affected also the performance from the educational point of view related to children. This is what I did as related to crisis.
And of course we know that you've been heavily involved in the SRM and building all of that, so that's fantastic.
SRM, it's another issue.
Yes, yeah.
We'll talk about it later on in details.
We will.
Hi. Well, I'm currently, my work is really connected to in crisis to early childhood education in politics. But the important role that I'm working on right now is I am on the as an expert on the technical advisory group for the UNESCO Global Report for 2026, which will be on financing and inclusion and development. On the other hand, I'm also on the technical advisory group as an early childhood expert on the ECCE path, which is a progress assessment tool for transforming education, which includes, of course, children with in policy in crisis and all the areas, and to help government transform their system of early childhood education. And the third part is also I'm on the community of practice that has been that is currently being set up by the UNESCO on how to form community and the strategy regarding developing community of practices in the world. So I think whatever we will be working on today, that would be helpful towards documenting and sharing these with the report in the Global 2026 report.
Absolutely, and we're going to be hearing more about this throughout this discussion. Liana.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation to Dr. Issa and the Arab Network. I am here representing the International Step-by-Step Association, in short, ISA. We are the Early Childhood Network for Europe and Central Asia, and I was really pleased in an earlier presentation to hear that one of our tools has been translated and adapted. I believe it was on the home visiting workforce. So it shows the power of networks. Just a few words about ours, very similar to your network. We cover about 40 countries across Europe and Central Asia. And currently we have about 100 member organizations. We unite together researchers, teacher training institutions, NGOs, local governments, and that is the power of functioning as a network, because this is how we bridge, just like your network, we bridge the results from research to influence both practice and policy. And it is this interconnectedness, this functioning as a network that makes this loop possible. Yeah. And ultimately it is this loop that will improve the lives of children, will improve practices and policies. And what we do as a network, I have to share with you, we do much less research than you do. Today was a revelation for me and such a powerful learning experience. Our members are mostly implementers, and of course they partner with researchers on the ground. So I hope that after today we can explore more bridges between our networks. What we do at ISA strongly is creation, co-creation, dissemination of knowledge. We run several knowledge platforms for the workforce, for health systems, for ECD, a lot of resources produced by our members, and some new initiative which I'm really excited to share with you in the next question. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm representing BRAC Institute of Educational Development of BRAC University, Bangladesh. So as a part of BRAC ecosystem, we worked with children and caregivers, particularly after 2017 Rohingya influx. We started to work with them heavily. Apart from that, we have as a postgraduate research institute, we offered 3 master's degree programs. We have master's degree program in early childhood development, as well as educational development and school improvement program we have. And this year we are launching another master's program in mental health. So these are the 3 academic programs that we currently run. Apart from that, we have our research team. 3 different research teams are currently working at different aspects of early childhood development and mental health and psychosocial development of parents and caregivers. We run several projects, and we also, I'm here to say that we always respond to the crisis, national crisis. So whenever any crisis situations happen, say for example, the Rana Plaza crisis that we had, or the recent incidents of the plane crash in Milestone College. So whenever there's national crisis, we used to work with the government to support in the event of crisis, particularly supporting the psychosocial development of the parents. So yeah, so that's all about us.
Thank you very much. And now that we know a little bit more about you and the amazing work that you do, my first question will be for Hiam. And the question is that the SRM is obviously a key focus of the symposium. We've heard about all the incredible work that's been done. Could you share your perceptions about how to adapt the SRM to the realities of polycrises, particularly in the Arab region, and what are the benefits of doing so?
Okay, thank you. And now the most important issue when we are talking about SRM is that we have to think about the obstacles that we faced while implementing the SRM, where did we get the support, and how we can improve it in a way, and this will lead to what we call how to adapt the SRM. Now when talking about obstacles, what we notice is that there is a problem related to timing. When we speak about timing, lack of time, for example, let's say we ask the participants from different countries to give us certain information, but we have to wait a little bit in order to get and receive information. This is not because of their inability, but the point has to do with that they are not able to get an agreement from the stakeholders to provide us with the information. They have to go and ask the stakeholders, the responsible people, and after that, if they agree, then we can get the information. And another additional point is that it has to do with the resistance that they are facing, and especially, or for example, no response. Let's take the example of when the questionnaire is sent to the parents. Some parents, the issues that were observed, that some parents do not respond, other parents do not know how to respond to the questionnaires, and so in this case, the responsible people who had to communicate were not able to give us on time the information that we were asking. Another thing is that bureaucracy that prevails in most of the Arab countries. When we speak about bureaucracy, if I ask you something, you say that I have to go to another person, a third person, another person, and so it goes on and takes a turn. So in this case, we have to wait. So that's why timing sometimes plays a role in getting information as quickly as we are looking for. But in addition to, beside this, we get what we call some form of support. The support that we received is that from the members of the ANEC, the people from the national report writers, the people who are working with us, they give us support. And by giving us support, this is one of the important issues when we say that, yes, we can adapt this SRM, especially when we find out after the questionnaire that I developed and asked them, as well as the interviews that were done with the people who were concerned, as well as with the initiator of the questionnaire. What I came out with is that they said that this one, or the SRM, has the characteristics of a participatory approach. We participate, all of them who shared in the studies, all the studies, they work in the form of a participation. And as I said in the morning in the presentation, they mentioned this, as well as they mentioned that it is a holistic integrated form. When I say it is a holistic integrated form in working, it means that they did not disregard diversity. Diversity was accepted and done in everywhere, and by this, then this is what we are looking for the future, that we have to include every person. When we are doing research, we do not have to forget anyone, regardless of whether the child is experiencing, let's say, trauma or crisis, or a child who has disabilities, even the parents. All of these we have to pay attention to when we are doing our research. And the studies that were done and the interviews and the study that I did reflected this notion of a participatory approach. No problem. Another thing that when we did the study, whatever the studies that were done, we find out that collaboration was very clear and perfect. Whatever we used to ask from the people who are representing the countries, they were ready to collaborate and give us the freedom to access, although access was somehow difficult in one way or another, but we were given the freedom to access some information related to the situation. And another issue that I would like to say about how can we adapt SRM, it has to do with that in doing research we took into consideration cultural issues. But every culture has its own ideas, has its own rules and regulations. We did not affect these things when we were doing the research, but of course we took into consideration all these issues that are present. Moreover, and the last point, I said so many things. Moreover, which is that tracking data. the issue of it that we can, when we did all the studies, we had our data. So if we are, for the future, if we want to implement any study, we can easily track the data that we have it, and then base on it new studies, new research, and this will help us to say that yes, we can adapt SRM in a good way. The last point is that it's characterized by originality. When I say it's characterized by originality, what I mean by this is that in doing research, usually researchers do the research for one topic and that's it. And they are not interested in doing, and they choose one. But with SRM, it's not this notion of jargon as research, just to do research in order to publish, but we are doing as, in SRM, we do research in order to come out with policy, in order to come out with recommendations as related to early childhood development, regardless of whether it is in polycrisis or in any normal situation. All of these things are important issues to say that SRM can be adapted easily, and especially when we have our studies giving recommendations. Based on the recommendations, we can reconsider other issues, and then we keep on developing other new points.
Thank you so much, Hiam. And I think that the themes of being inclusive, the themes of being culturally sensitive and appropriate, and then being able to navigate bureaucracies is a key element in adapting and scaling, for want of a better term, this methodology as a truly innovative way to learn and develop solutions for ECD, not just programming, but policy as well. So that's really fantastic. Thank you.
You don't have to forget that it's flexible.
Yes.
It's a flexible method.
Exactly.
You can adapt it in any way, and this is what makes it more important.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. The next question will be for صفايات. Your work at BRAC involves translating knowledge into action. So what are the key lessons that you've learned from scaling up ECD interventions in crisis-affected areas?
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah. So basically, BRAC started to work with the refugee crisis since 2017, when the Myanmar, the operations happened and the Rohingya refugee populations actually persecuted, and they fled to their homeland and now currently living in a cramped space in southeastern part of Bangladesh named Cox's Bazar. So it's one of the largest refugee camp in Bangladesh. So when BRAC actually came to know about these things, when we all came to know about those things, what we did actually, we went there and we started to work with the children, because early childhood development is a thing that is mandatory at the time. Because we found that mostly women and children are there, because all the men have been killed. There are few men who managed to escape the country. So we thought that we have to heavily work with the children. So ECD is a must. But the thing is that at the time, that UNHCR, they are also working there, and there's also a debate about whether this child work or child protection thing actually should start with the education sector, because there are multiple sectors in a crisis setting. There are education sector, health sector, child protection sector. So there's kind of debate that what sector this ECD actually should start. But we started to work with the child protection sector first. So after 8 years of working with the Rohingya refugee children, now and because of the recent shift in the policy, particularly the BRAC strategic policy, now it has been considered that 0 to 3 years should be under the health sector, and from 3 and onwards would be in the education sector. But if we didn't respond at that time, we just we trapped into that dilemma, then these things couldn't happen. So we started to work at the very early stage, working with the child protection sector, and now they recognize the value of ECD, and now it's become straight mainstreamed. Yeah. So this is how we work. The other important lesson that we learned during this kind of upscaling thing is this contextualization is very important. If you manage to like contextualize the curriculum or the play or whatever things is appropriate for the children, involving their parents, involving the caregivers, then what happens is that there creates a sense of ownership, a sense of belongingness, and it also creates a dignity among them. So, and when we actually implemented our HPL, the humanitarian play labs, in Cox's Bazar refugee camps, we found that people had some kind of, it boosted their confidence during that time of crisis. And we also found that there's a high rate of attendance because they feel that it is their work, it is their world. So the thing is that it's always important to have this cultural element or cultural influence into your work, into your research, whatever it is, so that it becomes grounded. Okay? Yeah. The third element that I would like to say is that that these kind of there's always a kind of compounding factor involving in any kind of crisis settings. Like it's not all about like the bearing the brunt of the impact that they faced in their home country or whatever, but it's also about like their other associated like causes. So for example, the poverty, the diseases, something like that. So you have to address that as well. And finally, we found that women and children, as I started to say that, women and children are the main bearer of this, that's atrocity. So, but we also found that involving father into the system actually reduced the burden of the mother a lot. So that's why we introduced the father engagement model with our existing humanitarian lab model as well as our telecommunication-based early childhood development model. And it actually proved a very effective findings, effective outcomes. It's all about our learning as a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks well to taking what is a humanitarian issue and then being able to learn from it in a way that enables you to single out and really highlight ECD as not just a humanitarian problem to be solved or being integrated as like, oh, we have to give them food and these things, but really to understand the nuances and even the division of 0 to 3 goes here and 3 and above goes here. I think it really helps to understand holistically what is needed, and I feel like so much of the work that BRAC IED has done has been grounded in generating programmatic evidence, backing it up with research, and continuing to learn and continuing to develop. And I think that reflects a lot of what the SRM is about as well and how we go. So it's really nice to see the connections here. So my next question is for Bushra. So you have told us about all the amazing things that you're doing, but I'd like to focus on your involvement with the ECCE Community of Practice at UNESCO, if we could talk about that. Or in general, we have, using the evidence, using evidence to develop policy solutions and reform and change. What, in your experience, has worked best to ensure that research translates into policy?
Yeah, okay. So I'm facing two problems. One, the chair is too big for me, so my feet are not reaching the ground. And the second one is that the network and Dr. Nail and Dr. Hiam has said most of what I wanted to say. So that these are two issues. Anyway, no.
Reinforcement is good. This is good.
So what has happened, what they've just realized recently is that any transformation, any systematic transformation, for any change, they need to be a system transformation of ECD, not just research here and health here and that. It is, yes, holistic, but it has to be a systematic. And that, after the Tashkent Declaration, this is what they've realized, that the countries, even though there is a declaration and recommendation, and everybody was doing conferences and talking about it and discussion, none of the countries were able to actually translate it into actions. And that's because there is no framework of how they're going to do the research. I mean, we don't lack the research in the Arab world. We've got a lot of research, and in the work also, but it has to be, in order to be transferring it into a policy change, into policies. The first thing is that we need to understand where each country is. There should be a national assessment, and that is what the ECCE Progress Assessment Tool for Transformation is for. It's a very comprehensive and based on 4 of the themes of the whether task force, the inclusion, the governance and policies, and they have a very systematic questions with rating with examples where each country can do a national assessment of where they are, and with the rating, because there is a rating, with the rating 1, 2, 3, 4, there's also examples, so it's very directive towards it. It's still being piloted. So with that, the country would know exactly where they are and what kind of research or what kind of policies they need. And this is where we start working, because if you want, what we are doing with the research and what was happening is that we really have no idea of what each country is doing regarding what is the national agenda, how are they doing it, what are their strategies. So the research, our research, we do need a framework where we have a mapping of the stakeholders in each country, especially in the Arab countries where you have a very two distinct geopolitical economies that are there. So you've got the Gulf and you've got the Levant and you've got the crisis all over. The whole world is in crisis anyway. So you really need to have a framework of who is doing what. And what are the policies? What are their strategies? What are their national priorities? And this is where we can target our research towards aligned with their national priorities and their multi-sectoral strategies. That's the first thing. The second thing is what we do, the researchers, we've got researchers, but we are not collaborating with the policymakers, and we're not collaborating with different stakeholders, especially in this time, at this time where we don't have any global funding with UNESCO and UNICEF and that. So mostly it's going to go back to financing, national financing. So you've got a big sector in the business or in the that they can not only finance by money, but also finance with resources, human resources. So we really need to engage directly with policymakers from the beginning. And what I mean by engagement, not only just discussing with them. The global report, 2026 on early childhood, is collaboratively written. It's going to be collaboratively written. Dr. Ghassan is on it. So it's going to be from the WHO, from the researchers, from the experts, so it is a collaborative. We can no longer do one research and just put it in the drawer. So there should be platforms that are really continuous, and I'm talking about interactive platforms, not only platforms that you can go and get the information, where you can meet every week or every month, you have thematic group working, you've got that you share this information and you know what they need and their priority. And of course, always remember, whether we like it or not, you've got to transform it into dollar value. What will they get from it? Will it solve their problem? Does it solve my problem? That's the first thing. How much will it cost? And how much will it cost me if I don't do it? So this is one thing. Then of course what she said, you talked about the culture. It has to be in the Arab world. We have, as I said, different economies, different cultures. It has to be local. Does it make sense to the people that we are doing the research? The communities that we are working with? Is it solving their problem? Does it reflect? So this is another example this is another issue that and the second thing is the digital tools. The digital tools, I know we're still not very familiar with it, but of course, if we have platforms, if we have teams, if we have where we can tools, digital tools, policy briefs, all of these that we can come up with not only conferences but with meeting conversation that we can globally, because together we can have, we just have one of the examples that I was, like today we had the Wadi Malo. Many people don't know about the Wadi Malo. The Wadi Malo is something to be shared and scaled up with other, another thing you were talking about, including the father. ARC has an amazing program on implementing fathers, and we did it with the parents BPP program. So it would have saved you time and places, and to just scale it up and see how it is. And then we really need, this is good, but we need to elevate the community voices. We need to identify champions in each country that can take our voices, that can provide and tell the stories. It's very important to include the stories with the data. Our story will always make it more acceptable, more, it belongs to they take ownership of it. So the case studies, whatever we do as research, it has to have the voices. Who will champion this thing up? Who will coordinate? It has to be very structured. It cannot be, we'll meet it once a month. No, it has to be very structured with guidelines and practices.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really, really clear, 5 steps to think about translating evidence into policy. And it touches on, this notion of collaboration and then also connecting to the local. When we talk about collaboration, we're thinking at, a local, national, regional, and global level. So I'm going to shift the discussion now to talk a little bit more about regional and global collaboration and bringing the community voice as it relates so heavily to what we've already spoken about now. So this is a question for Liana, that from the perspective of a global platform like ISA, what is the key or couple of keys to translating global knowledge into localized, actionable practice, and how can global initiatives effectively support regional or local ECD efforts without imposing a one-size-fits-all solution? And I will just mention that you have about 5 minutes for this answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liana.
Thank you so much. I'm going to link very much to what the co-panelists just shared. Indeed, we have been, ECD is in a silo. I mean, we're trying to tackle that for decades, right? But we as actors in the architecture, we have also been working in silos, unfortunately. So I think there is now much more concerted effort to share knowledge from the global to the regional, to the national, to the local, but also hopefully the other way around. So I'm very excited to share with you an initiative that we're about to launch in collaboration with the other regional networks, with other partners, hopefully also linking to the community of practice. We are looking at how our field can strengthen itself with its own strength. As you were saying, funding is less. However, what we do have is a wealth of knowledge on the ground, countries, local organizations, different initiatives in crisis, changing policy, changing practice. And we realized as a regional network that our members have so much wealth of knowledge, first-hand implementation in research, but also in practice improving, policy changing. And with that assessment, we decided to launch an early childhood institute that actually uses an ecosystem lens and which will use modern technologies of today for supporting learning, but it's not going to be a training platform. It will rather be a destination and a movement for transforming the ecosystem. Our ambition is to open professional development opportunities for every actor in the ecosystem, so policymakers, practitioners, local organizations, foundations, agencies can together join these professional development opportunities, and this offering to tap into the knowledge on the ground. So using such a learning management system, we can offer an opportunity, for instance, to a course around the SRM that can be then open to other regions, so that when we start doing that, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But in addition to these professional development opportunities, we also have in mind another component of the platform institute, which will be a community, which will be more than not a community of practice, rather a movement, a destination to hold together conversations. We've been talking together earlier that such a track of conversations where we don't have yet the knowledge, we don't have yet the course, but we can come together, and that can be the first step to co-create knowledge. And topics will include early years and digital technology beyond research, but also how do we tackle AI in early year services, or ECD in crisis, or how do we work with intersectoral approaches in ECD. So very quickly, because I know that the time is short, I do want to summarize a little bit, like how do we bring this global knowledge all the way to local, but also how do we enrich the global knowledge from the ground, with the expertise from the ground, and how do we support learning across countries, learning across continents. And our ambition is to see this institute as locally rooted, regionally connected, and globally relevant. It is in a way to democratize how we access knowledge, but also to democratize how we share knowledge. Because we don't need knowledge only from the big brands, the big universities. We can also have very valuable knowledge from the ground up. And very much to reinforce all what our speaker said, still, when we have such a platform or such events and professional development opportunity, contextualization is key. There is no such thing as one size fits all. And I think we as regional networks have been aware of this for decades. We do not promote models, we support processes. And through these processes, we reach to empowering the local organizations, the national local governments to develop their own solutions, and we facilitate horizontal learning, so there isn't a top-down transfer. And just to end, I think this is such an institute is more than a way to channel or share knowledge. It's really a way to translate, to connect, and to amplify. Because by joining forces, we will all expand our reach.
It's beautiful, Liana. I think the vision for that is so good, and I think that what you're describing sounds like the natural evolution of everything that everybody is doing, to be able to connect in a way, whether it's based on a community, whether it's based on a methodology, whether it's based on wherever you are. And I think inviting in the various levels and types of practitioners, policymakers, teachers, potentially children as well, it would be just brilliant to see this come to life.
It will also be building through peer learning.
Absolutely.
That would be influences and advocacy through peer learning. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Because the most important message I wanted to share in that bit was an invitation to all of you. This is right now in construction, and we would love to hear from all of you how we can all co-create it and shape it to meet our needs.
Yeah, definitely. So reach out to Liana. Please connect with her. She's got a brilliant network of global, regional, local actors, and just really worth it for this initiative going forward. Okay, so we have only 15 minutes left. So I'm going to say this is going to be a bit of a quick fire. And I'm going to ask Bushra, Liana, and Safayat to answer this question quickly, to say you have worked extensively at regional and global levels. How can we leverage communities, the local voices, we talk about it all the time, how can we amplify the voices of researchers and practitioners And in turn, how does that influence policy? I think we can skip the second part of it, because I think we've talked a lot about how to influence policy, but I'm really interested to know, what are you all doing? What are we all doing to amplify local voices? So I'll ask صفايات, please, to speak first, and then you can pass the mic down this way.
Thank you very much. So basically, what happens is that whatever findings that we get through research is coming from the global north, right? The global north researchers doing research in the global south context, for the global south context, who doesn't have any idea because they are not grounded into the local context. So that's the main problem. So we need more global voices from the south, and that's why BRAC ID has been partnered with MMA, Moving Minds Alliance, and we have been providing support to develop researchers from the global south. I think it's started from 2023. Now we are running our second cohort of researchers. So we are actually building the voices from the global south at the end. So we found that there are other regional networks like East Asia. There is a regional network called EGDAN. There is also a regional network in Africa, like East Africa ECD network, regional network, West Africa regional network. There could be some other in Latin America and Caribbean regions. So we need to activate these global networks so that the local researchers get some kind of endorsement. So if they get the endorsement, they can actually produce some good research, and then I think the voices can be heard. And finally, since any kind of ECD work actually involves with the psychosocial aspect of the development, and you know that we came to know about this thing when we started to work in Afghanistan, because we provided them some ECD kind of training, and then they actually required us to provide them some psychosocial support kind of training. So we have these short courses, psychosocial support training, short courses, and we'd love to share with you that we are open to provide this training for free of cost to the researchers that we are currently enrolled in our this cohort, and also in the subsequent cohort. And anyone from this regional network, Arab regional network, or any other networks, if they are interested to take this course, we'll provide them for free. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, صفايات. And that was a very obvious plug for the Moving Minds Alliance Research Fellowship Program, which, as صفايات explained, is a platform for researchers, early career researchers based in the Global South, to have the opportunity to conduct a research project. They get matched with locally or regionally based mentors who are experts in their field, and we've got one of them with us today. Gareen, shout out to you. Essentially, it's just our ability to leverage the voices and support them to become published in the future. This is something that we have heard, we've learned through our work with the communities, through all of the research, through all of our engagement, that, we don't have enough opportunity, so we are doing our best to do this. And I will just say that the third cohort of this program will be launching at the end of this year, so I will just encourage you all in the region to share out the advert when it comes out. Liana, and I'm sorry, I know I took some time, but thank you.
So I have two short examples. Two short examples. One example linked the regional network. So just to share for everyone, there is ISA for Europe, Central Asia, Arab Network, there is Africa Network, AFCAN, RNEC is the Asia Pacific Network, and there is already an emerging Latin America network that is called Somos Crianza. So we're all connected and really working closely together. My first example is around the workforce. We worked as the regional networks during the pandemic in the workforce initiative, and we had a very powerful collaboration called Voices from the Field, where we took the testimonials of frontline workers in the pandemic from all our regions, whether they were nurses, pediatricians, home visitors. It had such a powerful effect. Our communications colleagues told us that our websites gained thousands more visitors because of the social media campaign we did. So it's really powerful to lift up the voices, frontline workers, researchers. My second very practical, concrete example brings you down to the local government, because as we know, decisions about services for young children are made by policymakers at the municipalities. They administer the services. So in several countries in our region that had a large number of Ukrainian refugees, we worked with our members in several cities. We now work in more than 50 cities, 50. But a few of those cities were hosting large numbers of refugees. So we used a process, again, not a top-down model that we imposed, but a process of engaging the local action teams, setting up with the representatives of different sectors, focus group with the Ukrainian mothers and with workforce from different sectors, with the mayor's office. And as a result of the process, the municipalities invested more in services, especially the most vulnerable, but moreover, they had a much better strategy for their earlier services that served children in the entire community, because it was not only for. So the result was more funding, an actual strategy for their earlier services, and the budget, and the introduction of new services that were tailored to the needs from the focus groups. So the voice of the Ukrainian mothers, they preferred more play hubs rather than enrolling their children in the local kindergartens, because they wanted to go back. So they wanted more like community-based. So with that effort of listening, but it was again a process, a facilitated process, and not a one-off event, as you were saying, but really and also in a way educating the local governments to go through such a process of needs assessment and strategy development. And when I finish with this, when we asked them, we went to interview them, mayors and their colleagues, what are you most proud of? You finished this process, one-year process, you have so much, you renovated kindergartens, new playhubs. And they told us we are most proud of how this process changed our minds. We look at children differently. Now we understand what it means to budget for these services and how to approach the needs of families. So we really should go for transformation and mindset shift, and not only funding and policies on paper.
Thank you very much. I think that that's, again, just another example of local voices doesn't have to mean you need to go into this place and go to a refugee camp and exploit the time of a child in order to understand. I think storytelling and gathering information in that way is critically important, but I think there's an element that always gets missing or that becomes overlooked, is the role and the importance of locally based organizations, local authorities, local governments, how they connect with the structures above them. And when we're talking about systems change, and when we're thinking about what does this system look like, what is the socio-ecological construction of the solutions or the problems, when we start thinking about that, then you can do a really good job of targeting these things. So Bushra, if you want to speak quickly about leveraging communities at these for research, please let us know.
Unfortunately, we need a change of mind.
Yes.
The researchers and the researchers, the early childhood education, or the experts in early childhood. We need to shift our mind. We need a mind shift in how we're going to target decision maker and government, because until now we still think it's a long-term achievement. If there is a crisis, the whole thing just goes backwards, and it's not. So we really need to start thinking like business people, like financial, and we're talking about a space where we can create a space for the voices. So we need to see how these spaces, how they are structured, not just we creating, as I said before, but we need to involve policymakers, practitioners, businessmen. I mean, today in the Global Child Forum, you've got about 30,000 businesses that are implementing children's rights in their work. So we can do it. We can voice out and influence this by hooking up with other researchers, combining, but we really need to think about outcomes related to economic value so that they can. And by doing this, how can we do this? We need to turn the research data into knowledgeable tool, into actionable knowledge, like toolkits, like you're saying, like programs development, like policy briefs. We need to have the tools, directive, instructive tools that they can follow. People don't want to go back and if they have something that they can understand and they can follow, then they will do it. And it's very important. It's not a research that they can. And we need to also look at one time, Joan, you were saying about action research. It doesn't have to be academic. It doesn't. We need real time. It's changing fast. It's okay. We can measure the impact later, but we need to start going, and that is very important. And not only look at one, just the early childhood educators or the teachers in education. We're looking at all sectors, everyone. Policy language. We don't have a policy language. We need to reformat it into policy language. Again, I'm probably putting a lot on economic value, but this is very important that we use the same policy wording that they understand and they translate the real world experiences into policy language that they can understand. And of course, peer learning, you've said about all of these. The important thing is that we need, if I may say the last, we need to have a mindset change, move towards more business, because early childhood education, we love the children and we care and we want them to be educators and we want them to be this. If we do not tell the government that this is how much it's going to cost you in revolutions, in health, we are not going to get anywhere. We're just going to keep talking about, they did it. We're still talking about the preschool, and it's way up and nobody. Now we really need to reinforce what Jack Hackman said and what they were talking about, the preschool, turn it into policies, make sure that we have advocacy, strong advocacy, and have a revolution.
I would like to add something. We kept on saying that we have to do research and we have to engage policymakers, researchers, and so on, and we have to listen to hear stories. But we are not hearing the stories of the children themselves. So the important issue, if we want to make changes, we have to listen to the children, we have to work with the children, understand their needs, assess these needs, and based on this, then we can come out with better solution. What you said is completely true, but I see it from the point of view of the child. And children are not, we are not asking them what they are in need. Even when we try to put the strategic research, the national strategy for early childhood development, we put it from our own point of view. We do not put points from the point of view of children and what are their needs. This is what I wanted to add.
I didn't say that. I was in the Voices of Children, by the way. I was quite heavily involved in that. No, I didn't say that. I said what we need to do is to include stories, the data with stories from the field, to support.
Yeah, and I think there's a very common saying, especially among the refugee communities, any kind of marginalized group, and I say it all the time, is nothing about us without us. And just because children can't tell you that themselves right now, it doesn't mean that it's not true. So nothing about children without children is a key element of the work that we need to take forward and ensure that we bring it ahead. I don't know about time, but we're going to do this very quickly, okay? And it's going to be, think about it like a game show, very quickly. So, Hiam, I'm going to ask you first to talk about the biggest barriers to getting policymakers to adopt evidence-based strategies, and then the three of you, and then you can finish at the end, we'll talk about what are the innovative ways to to overcome these challenges and make the case. So, barriers, go.
Thank you. If I would like to start with the barriers, I have to talk about political and institutional barriers.
Yeah.
This is one important issue because when we speak about barriers, we find out that all politicians, they have their own short-term political priorities. They don't think for the future. What do they do? Okay, what we have to do now, but if we invest in the children, in certain activities, then we can benefit more. In addition to this, we have a problem which has to do with leadership turnover. The leadership over, it means that it's putting a barrier for the continuous development of whatever related to early childhood development. A third one is that, speaking it very quickly and still short. Work in weak interministerial coordination. When we say our intersectorial, the point is that every sector works alone by itself for the benefit of the child. The health department works alone, let's say education alone, and whatever it is, welfare, etc., they work alone. So this is a drastic problem when we are talking about political issues related to the development. If I want to talk about this is a second barrier, it has to do with resources and capacity constraints. Bushra mentioned something about resources. I'm not going to say more, but one important issue is that our people who work in the field of education, of early childhood, they do not have a clear idea about what are the things that they have to develop. As related to, for example, they think that we cannot do this because of budget. So they disregard, and if we notice, we notice that the lowest budget that is done on, it has to do with early childhood, as related to ministries. Another issue, it has to do with what we call communication and the framing gaps. There is a gap between communication where researchers, as you said, researchers don't interact with each other, don't put priorities on what are the researches that have to be done. So this is a problem. In addition to lack of stories, as you said, Bushra. And the last one is it has to do with trust and governance challenges. When we say trust, it means, for example, we don't have any clear idea about or evidence about what's happening in every country as related to early childhood development, as related to policies, what was implemented and what is going to be implemented. We are experiencing some form of corruption in ministries, and this notion also hinders the development of early child development. Another issue, it has to do with weak accountability. No one is asked about whether this person, who is accountable for what, and these things are lacking in our I'm talking about as related to early childhood development. So these are problems or barriers that I think that they are affecting the development of early childhood.
And I think a lot of people would agree that this is, even when I think about, I live in the UK, I've lived in Canada, these barriers exist everywhere. And I think that it's a very common theme, and these are very common challenges, that just exist unilaterally. I think in order to break them down, there needs to be kind of innovative solutions, and we need to think about what we can do. How can we, you've talked a lot, Bushra, about making it have a dollar value. How do you make a case for investment? So maybe we can start with Bushra on this, and this will be the final question before we end. So how do you make the case for ECD?
Well,
as a policy issue?
Right now, most of what our research, what we're doing is really documenting the problems and documenting, not really driving solutions. So that's what, and this is because of exactly what she said. We have fragmented and absent of local data. So this was, and also we don't know what they're going to be doing and who is doing what. Now, in the ECC EPAT that has been developed by UNESCO, this is a solution, an innovative solution where the countries can develop it, can answer the questions, they know, they report on what they have, and it's a clear roadmap. They develop an action plan for it to see. Once you do that, then you can say, okay, this is where it's going to be taking me, and this is what I need as resources. In regarding to transforming into dollar value, we really need when we do the policy, let's say on health, on sector, because they work in silos, when you sit with decision maker or policy maker and they put their strategy, if you calculate, and you need an economist to do that, and they've done it before with the preschool, with a lot of you calculate how much is it going to cost you if you do not, let's say, feed that child in there, or if that child does not access. Actually, I don't have the time, but I can tell you about an example that happened with me when I was working with Rand in Qatar when they started developing the independent schools. Anyway, I'll tell you about it later. So you really need to calculate exactly what is going to cost the government. Now, or what is going to cost the society. Businesses are realizing that. They are, of course, we don't want them to go on to, be too involved because it's a private business, but they are realizing how important to the workforce, to their productivity, if they really ensure a good, if they provide if they preserve children's right in their businesses. So it's really making them realize that they are getting more money, they're getting more advocacy. Another thing that we really need to do, first of all, is to know who is, like she said, who is doing what in every country and target them with advocacy position papers, with evidence-based, that if you do not do this, and this is where we can start having a conversation on a strategic level, because to all the countries, to every single government, whether it's a rich country or not, early childhood education is still not a priority. If there is a case of war, we drop it to health and safety and protection. So we really need to make sure that, no, this is part of it.
I'm going to offer an example that illustrates the 3 points that I would propose as solutions to the barrier. So the 3 points would be like systems thinking and integrated multi-sectoral approach, number one. Number two, so we need to really break through that ECD belongs to nobody and belongs to everybody at the same time, and is no longer a priority if a crisis hits. Number two solution I propose is along the lines you were saying, Bushra, the narratives that move or change hearts and minds. We need these narratives because policymakers don't respond so much to statistics. They will respond to calculations, but they respond also to stories. And number three, we need to build and mobilize policy champions. It was mentioned before. So I'm going to share a very practical example that combines these three. In one of our countries, in Romania, our member organizations ran a campaign for many years, and they mobilized business leaders into a national network, 50 of them. The most engaged person that was touched by the stories was a tax lawyer, and he used to serve as state secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and he immediately got it how early years is really the future for economy, for prosperity, for he was also a father, you know. So he said, okay, what can I do? He started doing some calculations. What were the gaps? There are not enough nurseries, creches in the countries. Simply there isn't the infrastructure. There isn't the workforce, but the infrastructure either. So he then proposed and got through the parliament a revision of the fiscal code that he designed as a proposal, so that businesses would get tax credits if they build creches, nurseries next to their large factories that would then enter the property of the government. The government would pay the workforce, and they calculated that everybody benefited this way. And there was then, of course, the advocacy continued to, they were successful to introduce pre-service training for the workforce to work with the under threes, because we didn't have in Romania qualified for under threes. They mobilized the media, why education begins at birth. So really it was a integrated, multi-sector, education, health were involved, business sector, media. And this is an example. Of course it took several years.
Yeah.
It's not something to do overnight, but it's also how we approach it as a continuous process and never give up.
Thank you.
By the way, it's been scaled up to Italy. Trieste, and I think Bologna is doing it. And one of the things, mindset, is how to talk to policymakers. That's one of the, that's how we policy work.
Yeah.
It's been scaled up to Bologna.
So thank you. So there will be always a problem, you know, because when you talk with the government or the policymakers, there's a political element into it. So you need to address that. You need to find some workaround that how you engage with the policymaker in the discussion process. So say for example, in our cases in Rohingya refugee camps, when we started to work there, there was a restriction of like implementing any kind of mental health support system into the camp because they couldn't understand the value of like this kind of interventions. So what then we did actually, we trained all the camp in church. And then we made them realize the importance of mental health, and then they actually allowed us to implement this particular intervention for the children. So another example is that there's also like a scarcity of like play-based curriculum into our national curriculum. So when we started to work with the humanitarian play labs in the Rohingya refugee camps, actually that actually paved a way to integrate the play-based curriculum into our 4 to 5 curriculum, into our pre-primary curriculum. So right now the curriculum has been formulated and it will be implemented from the next year. So this is how you have to find some way. So whatever obstacles you have to find a way. So should we stop our work? No, never. Because I understand whenever we partner with MMA, we had a colleague who actually been graduated through MMA fellowship as a researcher. Now we understand how confident he is. Actually, he can actually talk in any forums, right? So we have to make that opportunity to the researchers from the global south, so that their voices can be heard. So every opportunity should be taken. And another thing is that although there are like funding issues, and you're also talking about like calculating the cost and other things, even the government at first might not be like motivated by the cost that you presented. Say for example, we calculated the cost of our Pashachi model, which is actually $8 per child cost for a year, and it actually brings about like $57 benefit. But with that kind of findings, we can actually, we can attract some international funding that can be actually now we are using to implement some other areas, and also we are actually taking this model like in other countries so that it can be replicated and validated, and it can develop as a solid model. So every opportunity you need to find and use. That's what I can say.
Thank you, Safayat, and I think that that's a beautiful place to end the discussion. But I just want to the key takeaways for me from today's discussion really just feel like, one, we're never going to stop, okay? As long as we're here, we're never going to stop. two, in order to never stop, we have to know where the train is going. We have to make sure that we're working together, learning from each other, and leveraging each and individual, person's strength, each and individual community's strength, and packaging it in a way that makes sense to policymakers. So learning how to speak, where to speak, using the language that's important, using the language that's necessary. The hope is that we'll continue to do this work and see real change as we are already seeing. I have so much hope. My heart feels so full speaking to all of you, meeting all of you, and I just really want to thank you. Shukran.